Steadily it rises. Public preference for Lincoln Continental as the symbol for today's luxury motoring.
Hey, it's Jason ODB, the Lincoln Addict. I'm back with another video. I've been on vacation, took a few days off, and I want to come back and circle around to this 63 Lincoln Continental Convertible that you see on your screen. This sold 2 days ago at the time of this recording for $44,900. I want to take a little bit of a dive into it to see if it was worth it. Did someone get a good deal? What are the pros of this car? What are some things to consider? So what I'm going to do is jump over here to what I have prepared. And again, this car sold on July 1st, just a couple of days ago. Now, the listing has these bullet points, which some of these are automatic. So we know it's a 430 in these year Lincolns. That was from 1958 to 1965. The 3-speed automatic transmission. This does have the Nassau Beige paint, which is the code T that you see there. Of course, it's a soft top if it's a convertible. Beige, which was, we'll talk about that in a minute. That's the beige interior that came with it. They had 14-inch wheels up until 64, so that's standard. Power steering, the reversed hinge rear doors, aka suicide doors, also known as coach doors. Of course, those are standard. Power windows, some wood grain, which we know is an option in these earlier year Lincolns for the most part. It does have an AM radio. It has the build sheet and some manufacturer literature. Now, what I want to do before I look at too much more here, if we scroll down, that's kind of just this information. If we look at this photo here, we can see, typical little bit of stuff here underneath this rear door we'll talk about. But again, in 63, what I want to be clear about is we know the back changes a little bit. The big thing from this rear 3/4 that we can tell that it's on a 61 or 62 is because the antenna does move to the front passenger fender in 63. We can see here another photo, a little bit of stuff here, nothing crazy that we can tell in that photo. And then we kind of have one of the money shots here. We can see the front seat is well worn. The rear looks really good. And here's what we're looking at. The steering wheel, I usually tend to look at the dash. I like the dash a little bit more in 63. It's a little bit different than the earlier 61, 62s. We'll talk more about that in a future video when I kind of break down the differences. We can see here it does have the air conditioning compressor. The engine bay looks good for this year, and we can see it has the single reservoir. It's hard to tell in this photo, but it does have the 3-port fuel pump. Now, they did break down, which I'm going to jump over here, and I also will break this down typically when I go through some of these reviews. But basically what we have in the VIN Door Plate is you basically have 74A, which is convertible. T, which we saw earlier, it represents the Nassau Beige. The trim 84 is beige, so that's basically reinforcing more than likely this is the factory original paint, factory interior. Of course, it could have been redone, but certainly doesn't look like it has been. The date, this one always kind of gets me, the 03L. So the 03 is the day of the month, so that would have been the 3rd, and L represents the month. So if you count it out, its L would be December. So this would have been December 3rd of 1962 for the 63 model. So that's the build date, if you will. So kind of an earlier, I guess you could say, 63. I don't know really what the cutoff would be for it not to be an early car, but basically about 3 months into the production. The DSO, this is a big one. I've talked about it in the past, 52. So 52 stands for Los Angeles. So that means it went to kind of a drier climate. Typically cars aren't going to rust there and things like that if taken care of. And then this is pretty much standard on most of them. You're going to see 1 for the axle and 4 for the trans. That's pretty standard. Now, when I jump over here, what I do want to do is just kind of go through some of the photos and just look at a few things. And then I'll talk about what I really like about this car. There is obviously a description as well that I kind of skimmed over, but I want to highlight that in some of the things that I think are, true thumbs up wins, if you will, for this listing. Although it has sold, I think this might help folks in the future and kind of reinforce why this one sold for almost $45,000. But basically, I've talked about in the past, I would prefer a car that's more original. There obviously are some pros to that. There's some cons to that, but I like the originality. If I were to buy this car and, you look at the paint and things like that, a lot of people would want to, have this car repainted pretty quickly. I really like being able to jump in a car like this and just cruise it and not worry about scratching the paint or messing things up. Kind of that patina look is very popular. Although, again, if somebody has a high-end car like this, that's not typically what they're going for. But what we can see is that originality in the paint. If we jump back over here, you can see some of these scuffs and scars, if you will, down the body. We could see, again, the paint is far from perfect, but it's something that I actually, I totally dig. You can see here the scuffs. You can see the front bumper. This is stuff that a lot, you could spend some time with different products and clean these bumpers up a lot, I would imagine, with some elbow grease. There's some kind of good products out there that can make this, probably look pretty darn good. But typically, you're going to have to eventually re-chrome, more than likely, depending on how bad this is. And if you haven't priced out re-chroming, or if you were in the market for one of these cars, do that. Ask some local guys that you may know, or folks that are in the hot rod world or collector car world. I know I use Advanced Plating in Tennessee, and I've always used them. They're the best, I think, in my opinion. But, if you start asking people how much a bumper and just the bumper ends, it can get kind of expensive. If we take a look here, we can see certainly, things aren't perfect on this car. It kind of has more of that original feel. We can see there is a dent and ding, things that are pointed out very clearly. So thumbs up to Bring a Trailer. They described this one really well. We can see it does have a Minnesota plate now. So obviously up in an area that's far from California, but doesn't necessarily mean anything too bad. It just depends if it was driven in snow and things like that. I would assume it was not. Here you can see the ding and whatnot. And if we kind of just go through here, you can see the top's not perfect. The back window, these will tend to do this on the original back windows. The thought process a lot of times is, hey, the top's going to be down, big deal. We can see here, this would be an area of concern if you were looking to, repaint it and things like that. It's hard to tell, how bad this is. You can see some little scuffs here. Was it at one point body filler? We just don't really know, but certainly kind of that original look and feel. This area, this isn't a deal breaker in my opinion. This area will sometimes tend to look like this rather. You would want to, inspect it or have someone look at it. If you owned a body shop or you knew someone that worked at a body shop, they'd be able to strip this car down and clean it up. And more than likely, if there's not a lot of rust in it, they would be able to kind of bring it back to a great look. Now, we looked at some of the photos. I just want to show you one here. If you look at what this carpet, it's hard to tell. To me, it does look original. And it has, this is the floor pad. If you bought new carpet from Jim Wallace, he's mentioned in the comments on this one, which we'll look at as well. His kit does come with a new pad that is sewn in here. Some of the aftermarket ones that you'll see do not have this, and it kind of looks a little odd because, this is the standard thing, pad, if you will. But for the most part, if we look under the hood, we can see, again, it does look a little dingy. This doesn't look too bad, but typically in here, as I mentioned, the deck lid as well, you'll tend to get some of this, rust build or sometimes discoloration, and that's due to the adhesive that was used. The last thing, and then we'll jump over and look at some of the things I point out. You can tell, and in this description, this person has spent some money on this car, going through and doing things like ball joints, doing things like, a lot of maintenance, which you typically just simply do not see when people are looking just to what I call, refer to as punting a car. When they're done with it, or maybe they've had it, they don't want to put the money in it. They just want to sell it. They don't want to, have any money dumped into it. That's certainly certainly not what this individual did. If we look at, as we transition and look at some of the things I like about the car, 63 is very desirable. 3,138 were built. The list price was $6,916, which is a lot of money back in those days. If you look at what Impalas and different cars sold for, certainly it wasn't the most expensive car based upon my research. There were cars out there that were more expensive, but this one was on the high end. That would equate to about $68,736 today in 2023. Mostly original, including what appears to be original paint, so I really dig that. There could be some spots in there and we can't really tell, was body filler used? Did someone come in there and do some things to try to, remedy dents and dings? We just don't know that. We'll see in the videos. I'll just scan through real quickly. The top does work. The top also has all new lines, pumps, cylinders. That is key because if you look at just the list price for this stuff now, you're upwards of like $2,000 just to get the cylinder, the lines, and all of that stuff. Then you have to install it. You got to put the fluid in. That doesn't include the actual top itself either, the material. The windows work. The auto drops work. Bonus features, it does have the auto headlight dimmer and the speed control, which is also known as cruise control. Plus, technically, it is an AC car, so that was a $504 option back in 63. Per Haggerty, that adds about 10% value. So if a car, was valued at $50,000 with AC, it would be valued higher. The engine was rebuilt and it was, totally gone through, rehoned, and it was put on a dyno. The color is a tad more rare, so I dig that. Certainly someone could buy this car and go, hey, I want a black Lincoln, but I like that, it's a different color, if you will, than what you typically see. The steering box and steering pump were rebuilt. It has new tires. The window switches were rebuilt. It does have the build sheet, which I think is awesome. Now, before we look at some of the things to consider, what I want to do is just jump back over here real quick and look at a few things. If we look at the amount of receipts that this individual showcases with this listing, I got to give a huge thumbs up because this is what I've been saying to folks. If you spend the money, and if you look here, this is just a year ago, if you spend the money, why not show what you have in it? And certainly, again, if nothing else, let's say you're in the market, this is your dream car, you want to eventually buy one, maybe you're saving some money, so you and your family can enjoy a car like this. Look at these, you can save these images if you'd like, but you could go through and just add them all up and just see what this person put into it, just to get it, to a mechanically sound, point, right? Engine rebuilt, just a lot of stuff done to it. And you'll see, again, if you were to buy this car, maybe you got this car for, $30,000 without all of this done, you can quickly see how things can escalate to go, hey, you're going to be dumping some money. So, if you can afford to buy a car and put all the money into it, fantastic. But you have to think about those things because everybody's situation's a little bit different. If we look here, he took the motor out. You can see the steering box rebuilt. There are a few guys out there doing these, and it looks fantastic. You can see they shoot it with like a flat black paint. This is awesome. It was put on the dyno, and I think this is fantastic. And just kind of breaking the engine in. It was rebuilt. I think it was March of 2022. The description says you can see everything is nice and painted. It's going to come with, obviously all new seals and all of that redone. And that's a huge win, again, because if you think about it, that stuff's time and money. Now, one thing that I did want to point out is in one of these receipts, someone mentions type A fluid for the steering pump. Now, I know a couple of people have chimed in on this in the past, and they said, listen, you can use this, you can use that. The thing that we've always been told from John Cashman, Chris Dunn, Blair and Teresa, people that have worked on these cars literally 40 plus years, is that you want to always use type F. And again, I'm not wanting to argue with anyone on that, but that did stick out to me in one of the receipts. I did Control F before I started to see if there was any talk or if anybody had noticed that, and nobody had chimed in. So it does mention Type F for the, I think it's the top itself, but Type A is shown somewhere in here. I think it was for the steering pump. So everything we've always been told and everything I go by is Type F only. So I wanted to point that out. If we jump back over here as we kind of close this down, trying to streamline these as much as possible, here's things to consider. So not even really call outs from a negativity standpoint. This is just things you need to consider. I love original. Original's awesome. My 64 was very original. Okay, I put a lot of money into doing a lot of the things that this gentleman did on this car, including rebuilding the engine and things like that. But you have to know that things can and will come up over time, and especially if you decide to really take a car like this to the next level. Think about paint and body work. We're going to look at a comment here for a gentleman that actually chimes in on this exact topic. The new top, Jim Wallace in Florida, he sells the tops, give or take, they're $1,000. You've got some extra few things, dressing items, if you will, that you also need to buy. And then you have to find someone locally to install a top if that's what you want to do. That stuff can add up to a few grand easily. Redoing the bright work, so chrome/stainless. A lot of times the stainless just needs to have the dents and dings removed and polished. Chrome obviously has to be sent to, also a professional, someone that's going to, take out dents and dings, hopefully, and then also re-chrome. A carpet kit, again, nothing crazy here, but, if you take the carpet kit up, is there any little rust holes? Is there any little things that need to be repaired there? Again, those are some things to consider. And again, I did mention ATF Type A in one of the receipts for the power steering fluid. That was something that kind of threw me just a little bit, but certainly not a deal breaker. Again, other people have chimed in on the topic, and I don't want to argue with anyone, but, if it was me, I would only put Type F in. That's what we've been told all these years. There are walk-around videos, and I'm not going to go through each one, but basically he shows the lights working. He shows the top down, the top up, the driver's side window drop, the passenger window drop. They go up and down, windows working, radio playing, the underside. This video wasn't the best, but it was more than we've seen with other people. You can tell on this car that someone has went, and this is not a deal breaker. A lot of times people get up underneath here and they're going to respray, paint and kind of clean it up some. But what you'd want to be looking for here is, number one, these cars do tend to leak. This one certainly has, or it's just wet looking where the paint's at. But I know that these cars do tend to leak. The main thing that you want to look for on these unibody cars is everything structurally sound. And I know that's tough in this video, but again, it's better than nothing. We're not seeing any rust holes here back on what appears to be the rear floor pan in the trunk, if you will. And it does look pretty good overall, and that could be attributed to the fact that this was a California car. The last thing that I want to hit upon is down here, there's a gentleman that talks about he's going through a restoration right now. And this would be a comment that you would want to kind of hone in on if you're ever looking to buy a car. Maybe you're looking to get one a little cheaper that hasn't had all this done, and you go, hey, over the 5 or 10 year period, I want to make a father-son project, father-daughter project, whatever. You can see... he says, my 62 is a California car stored in dry locations for most of its life. He's going through a restoration, and he talks about here, detrim the car, taking all the bright work off of it, prep, paint, and body, $18,300. That certainly is a number that's pretty solid. I've heard of higher numbers than that. A lot of people that aren't used to taking these cars apart will kind of just start ripping parts off. I mean, you have to be very careful on these cars, taking stuff off, bag and tag everything. But again, he was quoted at about just under $20K for that. Reassembly of trim chrome and restoration of front and back grills, TBD. He kind of breaks down the Jim Wallace carpet kit. Just a bunch of stuff here. Rubber the right way, which I only use steel rubber. But it gives you an idea if you were to buy this car, drive it a little bit, Maybe you enjoy it with your family, you get ice cream, you cruise in your local town cruise, and then maybe over time, whether it's a retirement type deal or whatever the plan is, maybe you then decide to take it to the next level. You can kind of get an idea and say, okay, what are the bumpers going to cost? What is the paint and body going to cost? But certainly I would say in closing, this was a great buy at $44,900. I know some may not agree with that, but the amount of money that this individual invested in the car before he sold it, fantastic. It just goes to show you how much this stuff can add up to be. And certainly I've been there. Sometimes it feels like the bleeding will never stop. But this person, if you were to save these images and kind of go through and make a list for yourself, certainly a lot of time, a lot of money was spent on this one. And to sell it for $45,000, I don't know if that's what he was hoping to get. Maybe he was hoping to get more. But certainly I think someone got a solid car, and they'll be able to build upon it if they so choose. With that being said, if you like this content, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment, even if it's just an emoji thumbs up. Certainly appreciate the support. Stay on the rise, everyone. And check out Lincoln Addict Podcast, however you find podcasts. Take care.